Welcome and thanks for joining us on episode number 245 of the Financially Independent Teachers Podcast. If you think your story could help other educators and you'd be willing to come on the show, please check out our webpage at financiallyindependentteachers.com and fill out the form to come on the show. We have a really fun guest with us this week, back again for another time. We've had Lucretia on the show. Lucretia Ryan is joining us. She's going to be talking about Social Security. There's been a lot of noise with Social Security over the last, 12 to 18 months or so, many changes. And I know here in North Carolina, as a North Carolina teacher, I do pay into Social Security and I am going to get a North Carolina pension. However, in states like my home state, the great Buckeye State, how about that win over Michigan last week? Huge win for the Buckeyes. Those teachers and my friends up there, they don't pay into Social Security. But with some new changes, those teachers might have an opportunity through other outlets and avenues to end up getting at least something in Social Security. So if you've ever wondered about Social Security, we have the best guest for you today, and it's Lucretia. Lucretia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I really want to get the word out, especially to the teachers in the 13 states that don't currently pay into Social Security. And I'll go into the new law that was passed this year that makes everything totally different for them. And I want them to really share this with their peers, share this with retired teachers, because it really applies to a lot of people.
Absolutely. And in case you missed it from episodes past, Lucretia is the founder of financialfreedomforwomen.org, which is a nonprofit dedicated to empowering women to make informed, independent financial decisions that truly serve their best interest. There are no fees or anything like that. Lucretia does everything pro bono, if I'm not mistaken. You're
Mhm.
just here to help people. And I think we've talked before that even though you have the financial freedom for women, if a man sent you an email or sent you a text, you're not against helping men as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally fine. And what I found is millennial men are very open to receiving advice. So I've done a lot of millennial men, looked
That's
at their
interesting. That's interesting.
403B.
I
Yeah,
agree because I've worked with my financial coaching. It seems like a lot of times it's the women that want help and they're willing to sign up for coaching. And then once they talk to their husband, who's maybe in his 40s or 50s, I almost get the vibe of I can do this myself. I don't need
right.
anybody else, lifting the hood of my truck to tell me how to handle my finances. And then they kind of go ghost. So yeah, I'm happy to see. And Lucretia, if you didn't know this, I am the oldest of the millennials, born in 1982. So technically, I'm a millennial, and maybe that's why I'm asking you for help on Social Security. So you've done a lot of stuff. You teach classes, you write articles. What else have you been up to uh, besides just studying the Social Security stuff?
Yeah, so I've done, so my website, financialfreedomforwomen.org, I have a whole series of articles on saving and investing for retirement, and there's a whole series on Social Security. I have another series on Medicare, really what the insurance companies won't tell you, and that is a great series, especially for teachers. I have another series on financial mistakes to avoid. And then I also have a whole media area so that you can listen to or watch previous podcasts that I've done. You can listen in the car. So really a good way to learn information. And then I have a whole resources page set up with financial calculators, with books that I recommend, websites that I recommend. So I really try to set it up so that, people can educate themselves like that. I've also recently done a lot with professional development. So I've done Zoom calls for schools during professional development where I'll do either Medicare, Social Security. So if anyone is interested in having me do that for their school district, they can contact me at financialfreedomforwomen.org. There's a contact me button. And I'm happy to do any of those.
I think, our show is financially independent teachers, and I don't know if financially independent Lucretia is going to be a website anytime soon, but I would assume that, you have your own financial independence to be able to follow this passion project, and you're all about giving back, and you really seem to like to focus beyond women, but also with teachers specifically.
Yeah, my
Um,
parents were both teachers, New York
yeah.
City school system. So they would be very happy. Unfortunately, they're not here, but they would be very happy.
Well, you're keeping that teaching tradition going throughout the family, even though you're not formally in the classroom. You're helping thousands of people out there. And check out her website if you'd like to meet Lucretia. She's awesome. So let's get to the elephant in the room here, Lucretia, as we start out. Social Security. Anytime I mention it, and I'll run numbers, you can go to ssa.gov and you can run your information and how much would you get at 62 and at 65 and 67, 70, et cetera. People are like, oh, why would you even check that? Social Security, it's not going to be here anyway. The elephant in the room, is Social Security going to be there? Lucretia, I'm about to be 43. Well, I guess when this episode comes out, I turned 43 yesterday on December 6th.
Happy
So
birthday.
thank you very much. Is Social Security going to be there for me when I'm 62 in 21 years?
Yeah, so many people have read the articles that Social Security will go broke by 2035.
Yeah.
And I and a lot of financial people don't think that that's going to happen because it would be political suicide for any politician to do away with Social Security. It was started by FDR back in the 30s. And I don't believe that any politician would do away with it because they will not be reelected. So there are other things that Social Security that the politicians can do so that it doesn't go broke. And it's really not going to go broke. It really is by 2035, it'll only be fully funded maybe 75, 80%. So what the politicians could do, right now, the full retirement age is 67. Previously was 65. We had this problem before. They raised the full retirement age from 65 to 67. They could easily raise it from 67 to 69. When they did it last time, it took 8 years for that to happen. Or right now, if you make over $175,000, you do not pay into Social Security. So they could raise that cap or do away with that cap as a way to get more money in. So there's different tweaks that the politicians could do. So I don't believe, and I am betting on that it will be there after 2035.
Yeah.
And
Some,
a
go
lot
ahead.
of people, they read the press and everything, and then they take it earlier that they should, and then they it doesn't work out well for them when they get older.
Yeah, these are big decisions. I think you always want to measure twice and cut once before you just willy-nilly go into Social Security at 62. Does your spouse make more money than you make? You can look at your family history and things like that when it comes to health. There are a lot of different things. And do you need it? And do you want to continue to work? I know that's one of the things that my wife and I have talked about. I'm not an expert on Social Security. That's why we have you on the show. But my wife makes more money than I make. And kind of our plan as of now in our early 40s is that I'm going to take my Social Security as early as I can because I don't plan on working at that point in time. We'll delay her up until 67. And if something were to happen to her hypothetically, and she passed away before me, then I could bump up and I could actually get a bigger Social Security check. And it limits how much you can make if you take it early. So there's a lot of things to think about. Am
So
I
Dave,
wrong on that?
yes, you are wrong on that.
Oh man, tell
So
me how I'm
let's
wrong.
see if at the end of this you still have that same thought of when the two are you going to take it.
All right. Well, let's get into
After
it
I
and we'll
go through the
see.
rules and how things work out, let's
All
see if you
right.
still have
Well,
that
you're going to
same
prove me
idea.
wrong. Prove me wrong, Lucretia. So you think it'll be there. It could be different. There's a few levers they could pull. They could raise, again, that cap of how much you make to pay in. They could raise the age. I've seen a lot of people protesting over in Europe. I think it was France, their version of Social Security. I think it went to 70 years old and people were flipping out and losing their minds a little bit. And my dad likes to talk about this a lot. He's like, well, what about the bricklayers and what about the people that work with their hands and construction workers? Do we really want them working until 70? I think that's why it's even that much more important that everybody, when they're young or in their 40s, starts investing to not just relying on the government. But let's get into some of the questions. Can you tell me how Social Security works? And again, when you can claim this Social Security?
Okay, so the way that Social Security works, and you probably don't know this because you just see the money being taken out of your pay stub as FICA. Uh, so the way it works is you contribute 6.2% and your employer contributes 6.2%. So that's 12.4% that gets contributed. You need 40 quarters to get a check in life. And each quarter is, you have to have um, made $1,810 per quarter. That counts as one quarter, and you need 40 of those to play.
So you're
And
talking about like a quarter, meaning like 4 quarters in a year type thing.
yeah, you could get 4 quarters in a year. So that's really, it's 10 years. You have to be paying into Social Security. And then the way it's computed is it's the highest 35 years, the average of that, the highest 35 years. And if you don't have 35 years, the years that you don't have are counted as zero.
Hmm.
But what I want people to remember is the more they put in, the more they will get out. So people who are low earners, a higher percentage of their money they get back, not a higher amount, but a higher percentage. So, um, but they should always remember the more you put in, the more you get out. So that you don't have to play games or anything else. You should all have an account on ssa.gov. And as you said, it will show you how much you get at 62, 67, and 70. 62 is the earliest you can collect. 67 right now is your full retirement age, and 70 is where you will get the maximum amount. There's never any reason to wait past 70.
Gotcha. So at 62, I could start claiming. Can't other people draw on Social Security earlier? Let's say that there's some sort of like a disability, or is that something that would be
Yes.
different?
So there's totally different rules with disability. I don't have the knowledge to go into that, but it's totally different rules. So it's a different
So we're
animal.
not really talking today about disability. We're talking about, you meet that age, you've got the 40 quarters, and now I qualify.
Right.
Um, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Social Security, like you can get it at 62, but if you wait from 62 to 63 to 64, it increases by about 7% each year you wait.
Well, the way it works is so your full retirement age is 67. The difference between 62 and 67 is about 30% less, or if you do the math the other way, 46% more. But from 67 to 70 is a guaranteed 8%. So that's a guaranteed 24%. And there are very few investments that give you an 8% per year guaranteed investment. So let me give you an example of a woman who she was a maximum earner, and at 62, she would get $2,706. That would be for the rest of her life. You will get a cost of increase, maybe 2%, but she's locked into that 2,706 if she takes it at 62. If she takes it at 67, she would get a check for $3,844 a month for the rest of her life. But if she waits for till 70, she'll get a check for 4,766. So uh, the difference between 62 and 70, she'll get $2,060 more, which is almost 76% more waiting from 62 to 70. So and it locks you in for the rest of your life. And so people who count on Social Security as a big part of their income, it makes a big difference if they can wait from 62 to 70 because they're locked in. And so a lot of people take it early, as soon as they can, 62. But what they don't understand is if you need the money at 62, you're really going to need the money when you're 75, 80, because maybe you don't want to work anymore, but you can get a part-time job when you're younger. But when you're like 75, 80, you have no other way to get a source of income than, from your investments and then what you currently have. So there are people who need it now and take it early. That kind of scares me. People who say to me, well, I got bad genes, or, uh, you know, uh, I have health issues. I don't know how long I'm gonna last. That is a valid concern to take it early. But other reasons, or people who say, I think I can invest it better. I mean, it, to compare it to an 8% guaranteed return, there really aren't investments like that.
All right, can I
So
push back? Can I push back here, Lucretia?
sure,
Just to
sure.
throw out some other ideas. I know obviously I'm not the expert at this. You've given workshops on this and done professional development. Like my mindset has always been, okay, I'm going to have a pension, which I can draw that at 50. I don't plan on working full time at 62. We'll talk about some of the downsides to claiming early. I don't plan on working full time at 62. And why not take that money? Because in my case, I hopefully, knock on wood, won't need that money. However, when I die, my social security is going to essentially die when I die if my spouse outlives me. So wouldn't I rather, I know that I can get the guaranteed 8%, which is huge. But if I could just get that, let's say $1,800 a month check, and then I put that into like a brokerage account and it's something I could leave for my children and grandchildren, wouldn't that be maybe more beneficial than getting the bigger check at 70? And then let's say I only live to 74 and I got checks for 4 years and now I die and Social Security dies with me.
Well, the break even
Obviously, you
point,
can't play God on time, but
the break even point is about 78, 79. So there was a study done by United Income in 2019 that 96% of people um, make the wrong Social Security decision. They collect too early. So if you just look at the numbers, the break even is about 78, 79. So you'll get more money if you live longer than that. However, that the way that I like to look at it is, you know, you can increase your odds of being able to afford retirement. So I'll give you an example. So my mother, I think people totally underestimate the cost of healthcare and the cost of long-term care. So, for example, my mother, who was a teacher, the she was in assisted living. The end of her the last years, she was paying $120,000 for assisted living. So, she got Social Security, she got my father's pension, but she had a lot of savings. So it increases the odds that you could afford retirement and that you'll have money in the end to pay for your exorbitant health care. So I think you should need to focus on yourself and what your money is going to be. And if you have extra in your 403(b) or whatever, you can leave that. Your brokerage accounts, you can leave that to the kids. But this is a guaranteed revenue stream for you for the rest of your life, and you want the biggest check possible. I mean, it's almost double what you'll get if you have it, you know, uh, and when you get older, if you have money in your brokerage accounts, you could leave that to your children, and your 403(b), you can leave that to your children. But this is for you.
so basically what you're saying is instead of maybe pulling from some of those accounts to supplement your lifestyle, if you can just, live off the majority of Social Security and not have to touch those accounts, you still have something to leave, the legacy with the kids and the grandkids or whatnot.
Right. So if from 70 on, if you can live on that check and your pension, yeah, then you have your 403(b), your brokerage accounts, that you could leave on. And the brokerage account, the cost basis gets transferred, when you
So
pass.
once I make a decision, is there any turning back? Do they give me, hey, this is the scrimmage game. You can go ahead and you can turn that money back in and you can wait till 70 now. Or once you claim, it's over.
Well, if in the first year, if you decide, oops, I made a mistake, and you give the money back, which I don't know anybody who's ever done that. Yes. After that, nope. There's no backsies. This is it for life.
Wow.
So, right. And, another thing, I mean, I have friends who are thinking like you, I'll use that money and I'll invest it. And, these friends who are wealthy, and they have a very well thought out financial plan, and this is a piece of it, and that's how they're doing it. I don't really care. They're rolling the dice, they're being more aggressive as opposed to having guaranteed income. But the people that I care about and that I worry about is where Social Security is going to be a big chunk of their income. They really need to think twice about taking the risk of, giving up that guaranteed income that is for the rest of their life. So, unless they have health issues, which that then I would say, yep, definitely take it early. Uh, you know,
It's a situation by situation basis, I'm sure. And it's crazy to think, and I know that obviously healthcare gets more expensive as we get older, but as we're sitting here recording in December of 2025, uh, to me, COVID doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but really when you look up, it was 5 years ago.
yeah.
So if you're somebody thinking, gosh, how could I ever go from 62 and wait till 67 or 62 to 70? Time goes by even faster than we think, and you might just be able to wait, and it might not impact you as much as you think.
Yeah, I mean, you can still get a part-time job, uh, you know, but when you get older, you will not be able, I mean, my she lasted till 96. She's not getting any part-time job at any of
Yeah.
those times. And the healthcare costs are, I mean, unless people have taken care of their parents, they don't realize what healthcare in retirement is going to cost.
Who knows what it's going to be like, in 20 years when I get to that age of being able to, do I take it? Do I not take it? Healthcare, I'm sure at that point will be double or triple what it is right now, the way that it's trending. So, why do you think most people claim it early? And what are the downsides? Obviously, you mentioned that when you take it at 62, it will be less money each month. Are there any other downsides to taking it early?
Well, uh, one of the things is the way Social Security works is if you take it before your full retirement age, you can't earn over a certain amount of money. I think it's like $24,000, uh, or your Social Security will be reduced. In addition, if you want to leave if to your spouse, and it's called survivor benefits, which we can talk about a little later, um, you want the biggest check possible. And by waiting until 70, you will leave your spouse, also your ex-spouse, but people don't usually care about their ex-spouse, the biggest check possible. So, like the way it works with survivor benefits, my father was getting $1,500. My mother was getting $1,000. And the two of them together, so that's $2,500. Then he passes, she gets his, which is $1,500, but she no longer has the two of them. So it's so much better for her to have a higher amount because she's now lost, one of those incomes. That's how survivor benefits work. So if you care about leaving the biggest check for your spouse, when they lose your whole income, that's why you want to wait till 70 when you'll have the largest amount for survivor benefits.
So she was making 1,000 a month. He was making 1,500 a month, combined 2,500. Once he passes away, she bumps up to his 1,500, but she's still missing $1,000. So she went from having a lifestyle of 2,500 a month with just the Social Security to now going down to 1,500 a month,
Right.
which is definitely
And
something to consider.
right. And then she probably loses part of his pension or all of his pension, however, you set it up.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's an interesting thing too, is a lot of people in the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I look at myself and sometimes I wonder, my plan is to teach 27 years and then hopefully I'll have 2 years of sick leave built up So I'd have 29 physical years of service in North Carolina as a teacher, and I'd be able to retire and start drawing on my pension at 50. But the problem is, I didn't really make any money in college. I mean, I started teaching right out of the gate at 23 years old. I had some jobs at the mall and things like that where you made a couple thousand a year. But any year I don't work after 27 years of teaching, that's going to be entered as a zero. And the calculation that they're even spitting up on there isn't going to be accurate because they're not anticipating you stopping working at 50. So those are things to keep in mind. What if I could work another year? Or what if I could work another couple years potentially to maybe replace some of those lower numbers when you were starting out with a higher number? Let's say you started out teaching and you're making 35 grand, but now you're making 75 grand. If you can replace 75s for the 35s, you'll have a higher social security at the end of the game. So definitely be weary of that.
Right. And everyone should have an SSA.gov account. They should check, did you have the 40 credits? And how much am I going to get at each point?
For sure, for sure. And I love the point that you mentioned. Let's say that I'm a teacher and I retire at 50 and I decide I'm going to take Social Security early at 62, but I get my real estate license. And I don't sell a ton of houses, but let's say I sell one house a month. And let's say I made $125,000. Well, you're only allowed to make around $25,000, and anything over that, I think the penalty is you owe 50 cents on every dollar you make. So if I
Correct.
made 100 grand over what I was allowed to make, that means I would owe the government 50,000 of that 100.
Well, you don't owe them, but you won't get anything. But now you've locked in yourself at a lower Social Security.
So I don't have to pay them back. Let's say
No.
I've
Okay,
made
let's give you,
125 grand,
and
but I'm
the
already
check
drawing
was
Social
only
Security.
getting $20,000. You wouldn't get your 20,000, but you don't have to pay them more than what you would have gotten.
Gotcha. I was always under the impression that if, let's say I made 125 and I was only allowed to make, 25,000. I went 100,000 over what I was allotted to get at 62. So anything over my allotted amount of 25,000, I would owe 50 cents on the
No,
dollar.
no,
That's what I thought.
no, it's any, so the way it works is, uh, so if you make tw anything over 20, so let's say 34,000, so it's 10,000 over.
Yeah.
Your Social Security would be reduced by $5,000 per year.
Gotcha.
Right, that's how it works.
Gotcha. So you
Until
don't
it goes down
owe,
to zero,
okay.
and then you
So you
don't
don't
get
owe
a
like
check.
cash that year. Okay.
But you've
That
now
makes
been
sense.
locked in that your retirement age is 62.
Gotcha. Now you're stuck. Now you're stuck. So we talked about getting Social Security from your spouse. What about that that D
No,
word?
we didn't talk about, we talked about survivor. So
Okay,
let's
okay. How
talk
about your
about,
spouse?
okay, so for someone who didn't pay a lot into Social Security, especially in those 13 states that don't pay into Social Security, the way it works is if you're currently married and you've been married more than a year, you will get 50% of your spouse's full retirement age benefit, provided you take it at your full retirement age, which is 67. So if you take it earlier than 67, you won't get 50%, you'll get 32% of your spouse's full retirement age. But she, in your case, has to be taking Social Security for you to be able to collect. So if you're married, you can't start collecting spousal benefits until your spouse starts collecting. If you're divorced, she doesn't have to be collecting. But if you take it before 67, you won't get 50%. At 62, you'll get 32%, and you're locked in for life.
Can you talk more about the divorce situation? Because I've heard podcasts before or listened to interviews where somebody was married for an X amount of years and let's say that their ex passed away, they had no idea that maybe they were giving up free money. Can you talk about
Okay,
the divorce
so
thing.
what we talked about was there's two things. There's spousal benefits and survivor benefits. Spousal benefits is your spouse or your ex-spouse is still alive. So if you're currently married or if you were divorced and married for 10 years and now not currently remarried, you could get the 50% of your spouses. So we talked about that spousal benefits. However, if your spouse, your ex-spouse passes away, now we're talking about survivor benefits. Survivor benefits is you will get the check that they were receiving if you wait till 67. If you take it earlier, it will be less. So if your spouse was getting a check for $2,000 a month, uh, and you waited till 67, you will get her check of 2,000 per month if it's more than what you're currently getting from Social Security. But if you were to have claimed it at 62, it would be a lower number. It wouldn't be 100%.
So is the onus on me? Hopefully, I'm never in a divorce situation, but we know it's a reality for over 50% of Americans. But let's say that I was married and then I lose contact with my ex. I don't get remarried, but then I hear through the grapevine that they had passed away like 5 years ago or something. When they pass away, do the checks start coming in automatically from the government, or do I have to apply for that? And do I have to do my homework to kind of know when they pass?
Okay, so we're talking about spousal benefits, survivor benefits, survivor benefits. So if you are currently married, like my parents, we told Social Security, oh, my father passed away. My mother, was currently married, automatically gets his check. However, if you're divorced, you have to apply. So I did a Social Security workshop for a woman and she was getting spousal benefits from her ex, which was 50% of
Yeah.
his full retirement. And then she told me, well, he passed away in 2017. I said, well, you should have applied back then because you're divorced, you have to apply. So she immediately applied the next day, but you don't, it's not retro back to 2017. So yeah, she asked me, well, how would you know if your spouse passes away? I said, I can't possibly answer that question. But once you know that your ex-spouse passes away, you should apply and you will get whatever check they were getting. Doesn't matter if they were remarried, uh, both current spouse and ex-spouse could get spousal survivor benefits.
Wow. So I guess if you end up getting a divorce, you might want to keep light tabs on your ex just in case, because you never know. I mean, how many Americans out there are not getting that extra benefit when maybe an ex has passed away and they didn't realize they could even apply to get their Social Security?
Right, but if you get remarried before age 60, you get your current spouses. You lose your ex-spouse.
So do you think, I've come across many couples that are say in their 50s and 60s and they're married and divorced, or maybe, someone passes away. Is that something that's normal, would you say, in that age group of people saying, "Hey, let's date, but let's not officially get married because then I would lose benefits"?
Certainly.
Yeah,
I
that's something to think about if you're out there and life can get messy and throws lots of curveballs at you, but you definitely want to know the rules to the game. That is for sure. Um, what if I'm working while collecting Social Security? We talked about at 62, there's limits on how much you can make. Are there limits as you go up to
yeah.
67 to 70?
So once you reach full retirement age, which is 67, you can earn as much as you want. So after 67, you can earn as much as you want and your Social Security is not reduced. And there is never any reason to wait past 70 to collect.
So 70 would be like the last stop. on the train. Like you have to get off there. You better get it at 70. But are there people that don't apply and they're 73, 74, and you have to initiate this process?
You have to initiate this process. Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, yeah,
I
you have
wonder
to,
how many people out there are post 70 and they're not getting their social security check.
yeah, I don't know. But let, but let's talk about a real common thing that is now occurring. Let's talk about the 2025 Social Security Fairness Act, because I
Yes.
think that plays into what you're leading to, because I think there are a lot of teachers that are unaware of this, especially retired teachers. So the way it worked, there was this unfair law that was on the books that was named windfall elimination provision, which was a horrible name. But essentially, I'll explain a teacher in New York, a friend of mine. So she paid into Social Security because she worked in New York. And if then she switched and she worked in Connecticut. If she never worked another day in her life, she would get a check for $1,500. But because she now was working in Connecticut and getting a pension from Connecticut, the $1,500 that she was entitled to was reduced to $500. It was totally unfair. And the same thing, widows who were due survivor benefits, like a teacher in Connecticut who was a widow and was due survivor benefits, that was totally wiped out by another unfair law called GPO. But so what the Social Security Fairness Act did is they made for teachers who didn't pay into Social Security, now they're just like everybody else. They're not entitled to anything more, but what they are entitled to, it's not reduced. So let's look at that example. So a teacher in Connecticut who was, I'll give you a real life example. So she was divorced. She never paid into Social Security because she was in Social. And so now she's thinking, well, because of that unfair law that's on the books, I'm not going to get anything, so I'm not going to apply. Well, if she waits to her full retirement age, which is 67, she will get um, spousal benefits. She'll get 50% of what her ex would get at full retirement age. And she doesn't have to ask him, she doesn't have to talk to him. She could just apply and she will now get it because of this law that is Social Security Fairness Act. So I'm worried that there's all of these retired Connecticut, what are some of the other states, Ohio, you mentioned, who are unaware that they now can apply for their exes or their current and get spousal benefits, or they can now get survivor benefits.
What about another strategy as well? Let's say that I am a teacher in one of these 13 states and I don't have Social Security, the 6% or whatever it is
Right.
coming out of my paycheck at the school. Is it worthwhile over the course of a 35-year teaching career in one of those states, now that this law has passed, to try to get my 40 credits, my maybe doing like summer camps and maybe getting a summer job or seasonal work or things like that to try to build those credits? Is it worth it? And how much would a benefit end up being if you're only making maybe $5,000, $7,000 a year?
So if you did 40 credits of the absolute minimum, which was $1,810 over a quarter. So if you did the absolute minimum, which is like 7,000 something a year, if you did that for 10 years, you would get a check right now for $155 for the rest of your life. If you put in more, you would get a check for more, but that would be an absolute minimum for the rest of your life. But someone,
155 a month.
155 a month, that's the minimum. But if you're married, you might be better off spousal benefits. If you're married more than 10 years, even if you get divorced, you'll still get spousal and survivor benefits. So someone who will just get the 40 credit minimum, yeah, you're probably better off going with uh, spousal and survivor benefits.
Gotcha. And that's another important thing to keep in mind here is, if you're a teacher in one of those states, but you're married to someone in the private sector who is paying
Right.
into Social Security, but what if they're both teachers?
Then that's, I really want to get the word out. Get your 40 credits
So you're
and
saying go get those credits.
definitely get those credits. I mean, just having income for the rest of your life is, people don't realize how fantastic it is. I mean, the people who have pensions sort of realize it, but this is a pension for the rest of the world. So to try to get it and then to try to contribute more, either, work summer school at a state like New York and Connecticut, we're right on the border, do summer school in New York, and get that money, do, maybe teach a college course to get money that pays into Social Security.
Yeah, now there's so many things you can do online, remote from home, where there's opportunities to pick up these side hustles and not even have to leave the four walls of your house. So yeah, 155, it seems like that's the minimum you could have a month. But if you get 155 and your spouse gets 155, now you're over 300. Plus there's cost of living increases. Would anybody here turn away 300 and $350 a month? I mean, that would be my internet bill, that'd be my water bill, and that'd be a good part of my electric bill right there. And it's another stream of income. Or if you're married in a two-teacher household in a state where you're not going to get Social Security, that could be a couple streams of income, albeit small, but every little bit helps. How about taxes with Social Security? You can run those numbers where you go to ssa.gov. We highly encourage you to create a username, get logged in there. If I log in and I see my Social Security is going to be $2,000 at 67, does that mean that I'm going to get $2,000 every month, or are taxes going to be coming out of that?
So the way it works is 85% of that number, 85% of 2000 is taxed as ordinary income. So, if you have very low income, you're in a very low bracket, very little of that will be taxed. If you're in a high income bracket, it'll be taxed whatever your income rate is. So, and this year, current administration announced the one big beautiful bill, and Social Security, let me explain to you, Social Security will still be taxed. So what that one big beautiful bill really said is, first of all, it's temporary. It's only till 2028. If you are 65 and older, you and your spouse can each get a credit of $6,000 a year. So but if you're a single filer, it phases out at 75,000 to, I think it's like 150,000. And if you're a double earner, it phases out at like 150 to, I don't know the number off the top of my head. But it's not that Social Security is no longer taxed, it's that you get a $6,000 deduction. And for you at 43, I wouldn't count on it because it's only in place for the next 3 years. I mean, they could make it permanent, but right now, uh, it, it's a
It's a
small
temporary
percentage.
thing. Yeah.
It's a small percentage of people that will see a deduction from that.
Gotcha, gotcha. But just keep in mind, have a plan that, when you see that number on ssa.gov, you don't get to keep all that. Some of that is going to be coming out, and it's just income tax, right? You don't pay other, you don't pay Social Security taxes on Social Security, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's the nice thing is, once you stop getting a paycheck, you don't have to pay the Social Security tax, the Medicare tax. You don't have that being taken out of your paycheck anymore.
Gotcha. So one of those things will still stick, and it depends on the state you live in as well. Do you pay state income taxes as well on your Social Security check if you're in one of those states that has state income tax?
It varies by state. Every state is
Gotcha.
totally different. Even the states that charge income tax, some do not tax on Social Security or
Gotcha.
pension.
All right. Well, it sounds like a quick Google search. So if you want to look at your state, or maybe you're looking to retire to a different state, move to Florida or something like that, I'm sure you can figure that out on a quick search. Let's see here. how about if I'm collecting pension, which I plan on doing as a teacher in North Carolina, and taking money from my 403B or my 457, will my Social Security check be reduced on that? I know you said you're only allowed to make a certain amount per year. What if I'm drawing down on those other accounts? Does that impact my Social Security?
That does not count. So it's only if you're working before your full retirement age, 67, will your Social Security be reduced. But it doesn't matter if you're taking money out of your pension or your 403B or anything, an annuity, nothing else. It's only if you're working. It
What
really,
about rental
you,
income?
no, only if you're working.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I mean,
So
that's just like
rental
any
income
other
doesn't count
investment.
against you.
Capital gains, that doesn't count. It's so they don't want you to collect Social Security when you're working.
I
And
don't
they
want you
really,
double dipping.
right. And they really want it to be for your old age when you don't have any other alternatives to get money. And for a
Gotcha.
lot of people, this Social Security is a big part of their income, when they get old. So for them to have the biggest check possible to make sure they could afford retirement, it's just, you know, makes makes a big difference in their lives. You know, my
You
my my rich friends who are like, I could play around with this. I don't care about that. But for people who this is going to be a big part of their income, they really need to do everything possible to try to take it, you know, depending if they're going to take spousal or survivor, to at least wait till 67 or to get the max would be 70.
yeah.
So let me just point out, if you're going to get spousal benefits or survivor benefits, you want to wait till 67. If you're going to work on your own income, you want to wait till 70. And if you want to leave the biggest check to your spouse, you want to wait till 70.
Yeah, these are big issues. And can you talk to our teacher audience here? I know you've worked with a lot of people, teachers, non-teachers. It's scary. I think there's a scary, scary world in America moving forward when it comes to retirement. I had my parents on a show recently. My dad worked at General Motors and he was a union guy and he gets a pension of, $40,000 a year, worked at the same spot 35 years, and you're good. But the majority of Americans don't have pensions anymore. What kind of crisis are we going to be in 10, 15, 20 years when we have this new wave of people, Gen X and millennials, that don't have pensions? And the only thing they have is that social security check that you're talking about.
Right. I mean, hopefully those people are investing in a 401k, a 403b, a 457, but that will be their only guaranteed income.
How
You know,
powerful is this pension for somebody like me?
this Social Security, I mean, I don't know what you would know more what you're going to get on SSA.gov, but uh, you
How about
know,
my teacher pension? Like, I'm going to get social security, but how powerful beyond, let's say I'm going to get 2000 a month for social security, but can you tell our teacher audience how powerful their 40, 50, $60,000 a year pension is? It's going to pair up with that social security versus the average Joe that doesn't have that 40, $50,000 a year pension.
right. I mean, the pension is incredible. I've heard a number, if a $40,000 pension is equivalent to like having $1 million, in a 401k. The pension is very, very powerful. And if you add Social Security with a guaranteed income on top of that, if they could just live on their pension and Social Security, then, they could afford retirement. And then they have to look at it that way, that they have this guaranteed income stream. And Social Security, you get a cost of living increase. So it goes up. It's not exactly with inflation, but it's close. There's other than a pension, there's nothing like it as an investment. That's why, people, say, well, I'll take a little less, I'll invest it. There's other ways that you might want to invest more aggressively to get a better return if you have a guaranteed stream with your pension and with Social Security. So, people have to sort of think of their whole plan of what they're going to live on.
You've got to reverse engineer this thing as well, right? You can look at all your stuff right now. What age am I right now? How many years are left on my mortgage? When are we going to be mortgage free? What year do I plan on taking Social Security? How much do I think that's going to be? And then try to see if you think you could live off of, 3,000 a month or 2,500 a month or whatever. Like we've got to start reverse engineering this thing and working backwards now versus all of a sudden you wake up in your 60s and you don't know how much you're paying out each month in debt. You don't know when your house is going to be paid off. You don't know how much Social Security is going to be. You've never logged in on SSA.gov. You're like Dave Fleischer in eighth grade preparing for a test that you didn't even know that was existing, even though the teacher is planning on it all week long. But you've got to have a plan. And I think too many people out there don't have a plan. We just kind of wake up and go, and whatever way the wind blows us, we just go in that direction. Now, I was always taught you never ask a lady their age. So I'm not going to ask you your age, Lucretia, but I do want to ask you, when do you plan on taking Social Security?
Yeah, so for me, since I'm in good health, uh, I will wait till 70. So I have the largest guaranteed income for life. I'm not gonna go after spousal or survivor benefits. I'm totally concerned about the income that I will get from Social Security. So I am going to wait till 70. But if I were going to get spousal benefits, I would take it at 67.
All right. So yeah, I don't know what I'll do. You've made me think about a few different things here. My plan has always been my wife being the higher income earner. Let's wait for her to draw on it till 67 or 70. Let me get mine early and go ahead and start investing that. But I've got some things to work out before we make those decisions, and I do have time on my side,
You do. You
hopefully.
got another 20 years or so. But if you look at the numbers and you see it's a big difference, but most people they just they take it early and then it doesn't hit them until 15 years later, when they're like, oh my God, I can't afford retirement and I don't have other choices. I don't want them to paint themselves into a corner.
But you'd recommend nobody puts baby in a corner, but you'd recommend if you're in your 60s and you're trying to hold on, if you're teetering on take it, don't take it. And I know every situation's different. You're not giving like blanket advice here, but you'd rather somebody go out and work 15 hours a week at a part-time job to supplement their income, push Social Security down the road to be able to make up for maybe what they need versus taking it early and now you're stuck and you might not be able to work in your 70s or 80s
Right. I mean, you may not want to work, but you
or
can
want to,
work
yeah.
when later on you won't have that option.
So you mentioned, and this is all great information, that you've done a lot of Social Security and Medicare workshops with professional development and teachers and school districts. How can people out there get in touch with you if they maybe wanted to have you provide a workshop for their school or their district or even one-on-one?
So my website, financialfreedomforwomen.org, has a contact me button. So you go to the contact me, it'll send me an email and, just write in, I'd like you to do professional development. This is when we're scheduling it. When we would do a prep Zoom call, but I could do, um, this 1 hour Social Security. And I do it with, I have PowerPoint slides that make things a lot clearer. Um, and then I could do a Medicare session, look at what their retiree benefits are and compare it to Medicare and Medicare Advantage so they sort of know what's going on. So I do those two sessions. It's financialfreedomforwomen.org, and contact me. And I like to do it as professional development because then I get a really good turnout since it's mandatory, I know, for you teachers. But I did
That's
it
right.
for
What
I did it for another school system in Connecticut and it was sold out. So I'm going to do it again. I'm like, you got to get a bigger room, uh, you know, because they could only fit 30 people in there and it was sold out like right away. Uh, so they
wow.
kind of had choices. So
Well, that's great. Well, guys, I'm highly encouraging you. Get up with Lucretia. She is so awesome. always willing to help. It's not about her, it's about helping other people and getting everybody on the right track. So, Lucretia, thank you so much for giving us your information. And I'll make sure in the show notes I go back and put up your episode that you had with us on Medicare. That was a very helpful episode and talking about Medicare Advantage plans versus traditional Medicare. That was all great stuff. So I hope you have an amazing holiday coming up and you're enjoying retirement, but you're still working really hard helping us teachers out.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye, Dave.
Thank you so much, Lucretia. And thank you to all the FIT listeners for joining us on this week on the FIT podcast. We hope you join us for next week. And as always, be frugal, be fearless, and be a lifelong learner. Take care, everybody.